You check out the annual list of the happiest countries in the world, Finland and Denmark are pretty much always at the top. The profound sense of well-being extends to the students at the world-class business schools of both countries, both for the quality of the learning experience, collaborative, supportive communities, and of course the wide range of excellent career opportunities. The Nordic business schools have a great story to share. And to find out more, I'm joined by MBA graduates from Aalto and from the Copenhagen Business School. It's a pleasure to welcome Antonia Fraga. Antonia studied at Aalto. She was in the class of 2023. She'd studied economics and finance at the John Cabot University in Rome and enjoyed a career crunching numbers, leading multicultural teams that then led to Helsinki. Zeke, also Jesse Shepher-Lykken, is a Copenhagen-based business school graduate from the class of 2024. He studied biomed engineering at Northwestern and then brought his skills to biotech research firm Illumina and is now with the leading healthcare firm Novo Nordisk. Welcome, both of you, to Centrecourt. It's a pleasure to have you with us. And perhaps, Antonia, I just gave a very brief background, but tell us a little bit about your story and this journey that brought you to Finland and to business school at Aalto.
Hi, everyone, and thank you very much, Matt, for this opportunity. I'm Antonia Fraga. I'm almost 30 years old, turning 30 this year. And I come from a very small village in the deep south of Italy, a village of 3,000 people. So I was born there, and because I'm a very, very curious person, I've been traveling and living home since I was 16 already. So I have been living, studying, and working in many different countries. When I was 16, I moved to the Dominican Republic for an intercultural exchange. So I was hosted by a local family, and I stayed there for 1 year, attending the local school. And that experience was really life-changing for me. So I understood from there already that I wanted to explore more. So as soon as I came back in my little village, I started looking for new opportunities, and I moved to Milan, then I moved to Rome. I've been working in Scotland, and then I decided I wanted to study economics and finance. So I went, but of course I wanted to do it in a more, let's say, international environment. So I chose John Cabot University, which I have to say it's a real gem in the heart of Rome, because it's an American university. So it's a place for American students to do their exchanges and study in Rome, but it's also a place for Italians or for different cultures living in Italy to have a really stimulating and international environment where to study. And after that, I decided that I wanted to experience something completely different. So I chose to move to the Nordics. And I sent my CV actually to, it's like an international platform where you can find internships abroad. And I got a job offer from a company here in Finland. It's actually a Dutch company, Evals Cargo Care. It's a logistics company with a very interesting story that was started in 1906. With the horse and the carriage, and then it became a huge logistics company with a really big fleet of trailers. And the idea was that they wanted to develop the Italian market from Finland. So I got this opportunity and I decided to move here. And I loved it. So I completely fell in love with the Finnish culture. And then I decided to pursue an MBA here in Finland. And now I'm here.
It's been quite a journey, more than a horse and cart to get you to Finland. And I'm struck that anybody that spends time in Finland just falls in love with the place. Perhaps, Zeke, that's something similar. Of course, you studied in Evanston, a picture perfect college town. And tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, and again, thank you, Matt, for the opportunity. I'm excited to be here. But yeah, as you mentioned, I majored in biomedical engineering from Northwestern University. I grew up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, so in the Midwest of the US. So for the beginning of my life, I spent my entire life in the US. And then I moved out to San Diego to work for a biotech company, Illumina. They're kind of the leading genomics firm in the country, or in the world, actually. So I was in San Diego for several years, and then COVID started. I moved up to San Francisco to be with my girlfriend at the time, now wife. Um, and My wife had studied abroad in Denmark in 2012, and she fell in love with it. As you said, you spend a little bit of time here, and then you never want to leave. So, from the very beginning, Denmark was always on our radar as kind of the next place to go if we wanted to make a big change. And in about 2023, 2022, 2023, I was also starting to consider looking for an MBA. My entire career up until that point had been kind of at the individual contributor level, specializing in a particular field, but I was interested in kind of getting more leadership experience, kind of becoming a more well-rounded professional. So the MBA was something that I had started to kind of look into, and then that ended up kind of coinciding with, let's make a move to Denmark. So I was doing research into, specific positions in Denmark, but then I stumbled across the CBS MBA, and it seemed kind of like the perfect convergence, where, not only would I get the MBA experience, but it would also help me kind of establish my professional network in Denmark, and give me time to kind of acclimate to the culture, acclimate to the professional system here. So then when I did find a role after the MBA, I wouldn't be, sacrificing my professional career in order to, get whatever's offered to me.
Again, what a journey. And presumably, you're at the world's leading genome company, way out on the West Coast. Your partner might be saying, oh, Denmark, I've got such great memories, but it's still a big step. Talk us through, deciding, well, an MBA, the break in my career, is that worth the investment? What was your thinking?
Yeah, so I think one thing that was a big help for me in CBS's case is it's also a 1-year program. So, not only was, the financial aspects halved relative to 2-year programs, but also the kind of gap in career was also shorter. So that helped me a lot because that was something that I was a little bit concerned about. I'm 34 now, so the prospect of taking a couple of years off of school was a little scary for me, but the 1-year program helped me, kind of push me over the edge. Obviously, that came with drawbacks. It was a very compressed timeline. There was a lot of work that needed to be done, the same amount of work in half the time. But yeah, I think ultimately it was, yeah, a fantastic decision. And I'm happy I made the investment.
Antonia, you'd already settled in Finland. You used the description earlier of the hidden gem, and I often think about that as at Aalto. They're not shouting to the world, here we are, and yet, it's this world-class business school. So as you were looking at the next steps of your career, Aalto was calling to you. Again, what was the thinking of what you wanted to achieve with an MBA to then accelerate the next steps of your professional development?
So in general, when I started working here in Finland, I noticed that I was working in business development for Italy from here. And I noticed that even though I had a really solid background in economics, that gave me a like really important quantitative background, but maybe I was missing a little bit more business knowledge. So I really wanted to get more in depth into the business side of the story. And I was considering different programs, and then I decided I didn't want to go for a normal full-time business program because I really wanted to continue working and really apply straight away everything I could learn from my business education. And also, I think there is a big plus of the MBA, which is in general, the class is made of people that already have a business background and different backgrounds. So it is different, a normal full-time business program. So it is different studying with your peers or just with people that do not have any sort of business experience, rather than studying with people that have already different years of experience and also coming from different industries. So I decided that the MBA would really be worth it. And at the same time, I was, to be honest, exploring different options. I was also thinking maybe I will go back to Italy or just choose France, or I was considering different countries. But when I got to know about Aalto University in particular, I really understood this was the place for me. And the main reason is that, as you said, Aalto has an incredible story because it's a very young university, actually, less than 40 years, but it has achieved so much, especially into building the business ecosystem here in Finland. All the major innovations in Finland have come from Aalto University. And the amazing thing that is making this possible is just like 3 words. There is no self-doubt at all. So in general, the flat hierarchy that Finland has is really making it possible for everybody to innovate, because you don't need to be anyone to actually be listened to. And this is like this sort of bureaucracy or kind of social layers that are present in other countries here are non-existent. So your titles do not really define your self-worth, and you can just find yourself like at a restaurant talking with the prime minister or the president in the same way as you will do with your friends. And this is something amazing because it really makes you feel that you can do anything you want. And this is really kind of sustaining a really huge startup ecosystem. So I really wanted to be part of that.
Right. Now, being part of a community, Zeke, and fellow classmates, I don't know what expectations that you have, but it strikes me, it'll be a very intentional choice of what your fellow MBA classmates were looking for by studying in Denmark. Was that true? What were your first impressions of your classmates?
Yeah, absolutely. So our program was almost entirely international. There were 41 students in my class, and I think only one had Danish citizenship. So, like you mentioned, we were all very different and diverse, not just demographically, but professionally. But what brought us together was just this common goal of having the MBA, but also doing so in Copenhagen, and staying long term in Denmark. A lot of us came in with the expectation that we would be in Denmark long term. So I think that really enhanced just our ability to form a social network together. But it just kind of shaped an identity of the class to begin with. Despite the kind of dramatic differences in the background.
Yeah. In terms of that diversity, because you'd have been in your early 30s, when you look at many of the top US schools, Kellogg at Northwestern included, it trends more towards sort of 26, 27. Is there a greater breadth of age and experience that are bringing insights to those classroom discussions?
Yeah. So our program, I think the average age was 31 coming in. I think is older than average. But yeah, I mean, it was a broad range. We had people who were 25, 26. We had people in their late 30s as well. So you come with a various breadth of experience there. We had people who had PhDs in biology. We had people from business backgrounds, marketing, all over the place, really. So I think just the diversity of thought there was really important for our class conversations, especially in such a small class. Yeah.
Antonia, you'd already studied finance and economics, so maybe part of the core curriculum was more familiar to you and other classmates. Hey, Antonia, can you help me with this discounted cash flow theory?
Right.
Just talk about the program, and also perhaps how you're then able to personalize the focus through electives, and also then beyond the classroom, all of the clubs and activities that are also part of this learning journey and leadership experience.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sorry.
Should I go?
I will start with you, Antonia, but I'd love to then put the same question to Zeke.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in general, in terms of the learning experience and the course load, what we do is that usually in the first year, there's the same amount of courses for everybody. So we go from marketing to financial accounting, so more financial and economics courses, and then also more, let's say, managerial, so people management, marketing, managerial accounting. And now we also have data and AI, which is a new course that has been recently added. It's also mandatory for all the MBA students. So in the first year, everybody's doing the same courses. And then in the second year, there is a choice. So there we have 3 different paths. One is finance, one is entrepreneurship, and one is global business. So this global business track is quite new, and it allows you to study every single module in a different country at a partner university. So it gives you a really global profile. The entrepreneurship one is one that actually it is really amazing here because it covers topics like service design or business model innovation, and it is very close to this fervent startup circle that we have here in the Nordics. So you really have the possibility to work with startups, learn how to innovate, and get closer to the entrepreneurship world.
Does Aalto organize or involved in an event called Slush? Is that
Yes.
the right name, which is a big sort of entrepreneurial startup ecosystem?
Yeah, it is actually the biggest in Europe for IT, and it happens in November every year. The name Slush comes from our amazing November weather. It is very slushy here. So it is like usually in that very dark and slushy month, but it brings together a lot of different professionals from Europe, and they make it also very eventful. There are a lot of different networking events and also concerts. So it is really vibrant, and there are a lot of really big startups in Europe that were originated in Slush. So it is quite interesting.
Zeke, with biomed engineering in your background, you know, a very strong STEM profile. So as you then thought about the MBA program, broader general management skills and business, how did you put together that program and again benefit from things beyond the classroom that were also part of the learning experience?
Yeah, so obviously my background is way more quant focused. So I think I had more of an advantage, at least in kind of the quant heavy classes. But what I was missing was the overall business and management experience. Things on the finance side, the economic side. So I tried to, another benefit of having a really small class is, there was a lot of collaboration and a lot of, working together when we were going through these kind of intense, 2-week courses with, with an exam or a paper at the end. So I think that helped, bring us all together in a lot of ways because, we were leveraging each other's experience. Everyone felt like they were contributing at different points throughout the year. And I don't think we ever felt like it was, one person taking from another. It was all, quid pro quo. As far as extracurriculars go, there were a few opportunities presented to us, just within the MBA. There was a venture capital competition that several people attended that went to Barcelona for that. We had a pitch competition with Danske Bank put on by previous CBS alumni. We had Net Impact, which is just kind of global sustainability group. So we had a chapter based out of CBS MBA as well. And then, the CBS is a really, really large school. There's tens of thousands of students. So while the MBA is just a small portion of that, we did have access to that network, all the clubs and et cetera associated with that.
With so many different options, Antonia, when you start the program, do you have to really prioritize? Because, I mean, saying yes to everything, that would be great, but there just isn't enough time in the day.
Yeah, I think this has been my biggest challenge actually, because since I'm a very curious person, I think it took me a really long time to decide what I wanted to focus on. But in general, I think in my specific case, I of course have a deep interest into finance, but I also decided to explore entrepreneurship more just because of the great opportunity that I have here in the Nordics. But I have to say that in general, in my class, what I found really interesting and unexpected from my side is that how also Zeke was saying is there are a lot of also doctors, PhD students, and lawyers in my class, which is something that I was not expecting at all. In my mind, I was expecting more people coming from an economics background or maybe engineering only. But we have such a diverse background that your interests somehow multiply when you start the program. And in the class discussions, you really realize that you actually have like interest in so many different topics that then you start exploring also outside of the course, that it's just impossible to just put in words how enriching the whole program is.
Yeah. And Zeke, you've now landed this great position at Novo Nordisk, but in getting there, when you applied to Copenhagen Business School, did you have a clear post-MBA career vision, or is that something that the school then worked with you to look at different opportunities and how you'd move forward?
Both. I did come in with, I think, a clear expectation of what I wanted uh, post graduation than most. I definitely wanted to continue the trajectory of my current career. Wanted to leverage all the experience that I had in biotech with the specific types of projects. But during the MBA, kind of like Antonia said, I was exposed to so much that I wasn't expecting, and there were definite points throughout the year, either through exposure to my classmates or exposure through um, the administration and career workshops, things like that, that almost shifted me in a completely different direction. So I was thankful, even though I'd still ended up in more or less the same industry. Uh, there were definite points where I almost went a completely different path.
Yeah. And I mean, in terms of having a clear sense, nevertheless, as you reflect on an intensive 12 months, something that surprised you, something unexpected in the program, or perhaps even something that you learned about yourself that you just hadn't anticipated.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that I wasn't expecting, and when I came into the class, I knew that it was quite small. I was expecting to make, one or two friends, and I'd be okay with that. But now the entire class, I'm friends with at this point, and I see, not just small subsets of the group, but I see the whole group pretty frequently now. So I was not expecting to make the sort of social connections that I did within the class. It's a year-long program. It's a small class, and everyone's coming from different backgrounds. I wasn't anticipating that. About myself, I think it goes back to what Antonia was saying. I going into the MBA, I had pretty set um, perception of myself as a professional. I had a pretty set, set of interests. But I think like the exposure that I got through the MBA really kind of opened my eyes to how exciting and interesting, these different facets of business and management are.
And now actually settling in the country, you've got this wonderful family, this extended network, which makes such a difference, I guess, as you build the next chapter of your life. Antonio, you'd said, well, I'm a very curious person, so you're always open to learning new things. Same question in terms of among the lawyers, the PhDs, something that you hadn't expected in the program, or perhaps something that you learned about yourself, which is beyond balance sheets. It's like, wow. I'm really, that's wonderful to discover a level of self-confidence. What would that be?
Something I really didn't expect that really shaped my career path has been that I got a really big promotion during the first year. And so now I'm basically co-managing the whole Nordic business development for my company. It is quite funny because I'm actually Italian. So I'm also now intensively learning Finnish. But I think the reason for that is that the whole program has really helped me to be aware of my leadership skills. Because I think the beauty of the MBA, especially in these countries, is that it's not only the technical knowledge that you get, because obviously it's more like a general business overview. You don't get too deep into technical skills, but it's about just the self-confidence that you gain out of it. And you really see yourself as a leader, and you also receive a lot of feedback from people that have maybe more business experience than you, and that really gives you self-confidence. So I think I would have never be able to put myself out there to even try to get this position if it wasn't for this first year of MBA. So now I know that I feel a very confident leader. I'm really excited about the next challenges. I really want to develop the Finnish brands of my company. I have a lot of ideas, but everything starts from you. And I didn't expect that this will be such a transformational journey in that sense. There are a lot of amazing professionals that maybe just don't have the self-confidence of really putting themselves out there. So I think this for me was the biggest surprise and my biggest takeaway.
You both reminded me of one aspect of Centre Court that I just love. You can read a story on a web page or, but to hear both of you sharing that story, it just, the energy, the excitement, there's this great promotion, and maybe, that wouldn't have come along without the MBA. It's it's so tangible. So perhaps my final question for our viewers all over the world, whether they're growing up in Minnesota, working on the West Coast, moving up from southern Italy, starting with you, Antonia, just your advice to someone that's thinking about, going back to school, getting their MBA, and perhaps for Aalto in particular.
Well, I have two advices, but I would say, first of all, it has to be clear what is the reason why you're doing that. If it's just to get a clear vision of where you want to go career-wise, or if it's just because maybe you're liking a specific type of knowledge, because that will also help you driving, like making up the clear plan and just going in the right direction. And the second thing is, don't be afraid of being yourself. Sometimes when you start an MBA, and especially when you come back to the classroom after many years of work, it can be terrifying to just really be there sharing your own thoughts. But that is what makes really the journey unforgettable, because just having different opinions in the class, sharing your voice, it's what is making it really unique for everybody and that is participating. And by having the courage to be yourself, it is also easier for you to understand in the future where you want to go, because you can get more clear feedback and you can really accept whatever career path you have inside of you.
Yeah. And Zeke, maybe it's a cousin over Thanksgiving back in Minnesota, or a former colleague. It's like, but man, you traveled across the world. You went to Europe. What would your advice be? Because it's a big step, and look at both of you, the success that you've made of it. So, what advice would you give?
No, I mean, I would just say dive in. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of risks involved with making this sort of decision, but I mean, as long as you feel like you can manage it financially, then I think you should absolutely dive in. I'm very thankful that I made this decision, and I think it was very enriching for me professionally and personally. And then, once you're here, I think, not only is it important to be vulnerable and transparent, like Antonia said, and be yourself. I think it taking the extra step and trying to, leverage others' experiences as well. Giving them the space to contribute, giving them the space to, um, you know, give their perspective, I think is also very important. Because ultimately, you're spending a lot of time with these people, and a big benefit of the MBA is getting this exposure to these diverse perspectives and these diverse people. So, being vulnerable yourself and then letting others be vulnerable with you, I think is crucial.
Well, you talk about diving in and sharing experience. I'm very grateful to both of you for diving in and sharing your experience with that level of insight and enthusiasm. To be able to capture that really is what we're trying to achieve. So, Antonia, Zeke, thank you both for being with us at Centre Court.